All right, good morning, or I guess good afternoon to you, Dr. Leslie.
Good afternoon. I learned how to say I know about six Greek words now, and it's the first time on a trip that I haven't learned a bit more of the language where I'm at. And I just don't know what I was thinking. I'm kind of immersed in learning Italian right now, and I gave it no thought. So, good morning, Calmetta. Good afternoon, Yasis.
Yasis that's
Yasis.
good morning,
That's good
or that's
afternoon.
good afternoon. Okay,
Calmetta is good morning.
camere. All right, got it.
But I've been listening. I love languages and cultures, so I hear words and then I'll try and pick them up a bit.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned you've been learning Italian as well. Is there a reason why you've been learning so much Italian?
Well, I'm currently having an affair with the city of Venice. I mean, the whole country of Italy. I love all of Italy. I've been doing a lot of trips to Italy. Every December, we do a Freudian journey to Italy. Most people don't know it, but Freud traveled to Italy over 24 times. And each time he went, he wrote different papers, and it inspired his theories and development of psychoanalysis. So, we've been doing a walk in Freud's footsteps last December. We combined it with Shakespeare, which sounds like, what? Shakespeare and Freud? No, 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 no. There's a lot of similarities and crossovers. And Freud, in fact, wrote a big paper about his Shakespeare's play, The Merchant of Venice. But here I am in Greece. I'm actually trying out a new hotel. I had a group here for the last, I don't know, 9 or 10 days, which was fantastic. We went on an amazing journey. And the hotel I stayed in with the group, if I was sitting on the rooftop terrace having lunch or just hanging out there, you would have seen the Acropolis in the background and the temple of, oh gosh, I can't remember, but this amazing temple and the Acropolis, which is sort of the iconic symbol. But I like to try out different neighborhoods. So when we got back to Athens, I tried a different hotel. I like really small hotels that we can take over the whole place and it's just my group in there. So this is one of those kind of hotels, which is really beautiful. It's an 1800s townhouse in this beautiful neighborhood called Kolonaki. Um, and a famous Greek actress lived here, and it has some of the original furniture. It's quite lovely, and this could be my new spot in Athens, but we'll see what the wind blows. So here, as you can see in the background, is this iconic, famous hill you've probably heard of, maybe not, called Lycabettus Hill. And as the story goes, Athena gathered this giant, ginormous piece of limestone, a limestone rock, and brought it to Athens. And that's how the myth goes of how the Acropolis got built. So this is the limestone hill. There's also, I don't know if you can see at the top, you can see like a church, what do you call it? Like a spire with the church bell at the top and the Greek flag up there. I actually had never been up there on previous trips, but from here I could pretty much walk up there. I mean, if you're in really good shape, you can hike to the top. I walked about halfway and then I decided to take the toggle train, the funicular. Is that how you say it in English? Funiculario? Funicular, like a toggle train that goes up, which was a great idea. It was tons of fun because in the tunnel going up, they give you like a light show, and I was not expecting that. When you get to the top, there's the most breathtaking view that I literally heard tourists and people up there go, oh, or oh wow, or oh my God, or something in another language that expressed this is incredible. You can see a view of all of Athens. You can see the Acropolis in the background, like on one side, you see the Acropolis and the sea. So it's like the Acropolis you see up on the hill, and then beyond this gorgeous blue sea. And it was just lovely. And those of you who've been to Greece before, you'll probably remember that when you're in a high place, the whole city of Athens to me looks like it's glistening with diamonds or sparkly things. When you're up on the hill, the whole city literally glistens, and it's just spectacular. So that's where I am now. We had an amazing journey. I wanted to go to different places that people don't usually travel to Greece and have a more unique experience. Plus, it followed what we were doing. The trip was called Jung Mythology and Finding Your Inner Oracle. So we were in Athens for 4 days. I can't remember. It seems like a lifetime ago. It was just like 10 days ago. Um, and then we went to Delphi, where the other temple and amazing artifacts and architectural wonders are. And I found out, and I've been there before, but I didn't remember that it was only discovered, Delphi, and unearthed in sometime in the 1970s, which really isn't that long ago. It was under a village, and they were doing some kind of work in the small village and discovered artifacts down there. So it took a few years. The government bought out all the people's homes and property in the village and moved them to another village. And then they started excavating, which gives us this amazing Temple of Athena and, oh, not Temple of Athena, but it's just fabulous. And that's where people went to find the oracle, where in the Oedipus story, Oedipus goes to Delphi to ask the oracle. Well, actually, it wasn't Delphi, it was Thebes, but people went to Delphi to find other oracles. And so it was this journey of finding your inner oracle and following sort of the footsteps and footprint of another mythology character, which you may or may not remember from Oedipus, but lots of other Greek tragedies and plays, the character of Tiresias that had like 9 incarnations. Um, he was known as the soothsayer or the seer. One of his lives, he was blind, which is an interesting dichotomy. Another one, he became a woman. So it was this great journey. We went Athens to Delphi. We went to a little village called Arakova and had a beautiful lunch. And they make local cheeses and honey there. So we had a really good time. And then we hiked around Delphi a bit. And then we headed up the next day to the mountains, the Arcadia Mountains, to a little tiny village. I'm telling you, it's the smallest village I've ever been to. Population, are you ready? 66 people.
That's
There's the guest house that I rented out for my group, which was spectacularly gorgeous. The views were, you thought you were in heaven. They were so unbelievable. There was a church or a monastery on top of the hill, and then there was also a little tavern. And that was it. Down the road, a couple miles, there was a cheese farm and a honey farm, and maybe 5, 10 miles beyond that, there was another little village. That was it. So we were there for 3 days. And some people on the trip were totally excited for this village, and others were a little bit hesitant, like, well, Leslie, what am I going to do in this village with really no people for 3 days? And I was like, don't worry, you'll be fine. Well, the one that was worried ended up loving it. That might have been his favorite part of the trip. Um, we went on a hike to Pan's Cave, which is another Greek mythology character. And then the next day we went on a hike through the hillside a bit to a monastery where the monks served us tea. And then we hiked down, and the man Demetrius, who owned our guest house there, he made us a picnic that we had by this running little stream down there. It was idyllic. Um, yeah, and then we came back and we went to a port town called Hermione, where we had private water taxis. Now we feel like we're, Jackie Onassis or something on our private water taxi, arriving to a beautiful, charming island, the island of Idra, where again, I rented out a whole gorgeous, like stunning, brand new guest house there that was an old like an old villa that they transformed into this, I think, 12 or 14 room guest house. So that was our trip. And then we ended in Idra, where some people went off back to Athens and then onward home. I came back to Athens. I had some other work and research and development to do. And here I am. I'm checking out new spots for another trip I have in my head right now, another Greece trip that will be totally different topic. But I like to scout out new hotels and new landmarks and architectural wonders so that I can decide what our itinerary would be on the next trip. So after I talk to you, I'm going to be going to the ancient Agora, which I've been to, but many years ago. And so I'm really going to explore it today with a friend of mine who lives here. So you get kind of an insider's view of things. So Greece.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. That sounds like a spectacular itinerary that you put together, and
it was
really
really wonderful. And one of the questions I asked people at the end was because it was Jung mythology and finding your inner oracle. Did you find your inner oracle? And we had so many mixed responses on that. But I'll share mine with you because, well, it's still fresh in my mind and because I'm still pondering and ruminating over it. I thought that I knew what an oracle was before I came to Greece. And I found out during the journey that, well, what I thought I knew maybe wasn't what I really knew. And at the end of the trip, I realized that everybody has a different oracle that they consult. And so that's what I learned. I learned what my oracle is.
interesting. And is that something that you want to expand on, or is that something you want to keep a little personal for now, at least?
No, my life's kind of an open book. I my oracle turns out to be my mother and father, who my dad passed away very recently, my mom a few years ago. In fact, the last time I was in Greece, I came here 3 months after she passed away, and that trip seems like a blur to me. But what I learned that trip was that travel actually helps heal grief and that trip in particular really took me to a different level of my grief and the same here. So when I say that finding my oracle is my mother and father, when I have important decisions to make or even silly things come up, I'll think to myself, oh, what would my mom and dad say about that? And depending on the situation, it might be, oh, what would my dad do in this situation? And I have the answer. And that seems to be what my definition of an oracle is currently. That could change. I'll let you know.
That's awesome. So you mentioned the kind of wraparound experience of the itinerary that you provided for the people who traveled with you on this journey, and how some of the emotional and personal growth that they some of them experienced, or at least that you experienced finding your inner oracle. One other kind of aspect of your I guess your approach to travel, your group travel, that I really found interesting was the notion of building kind of connection and community and lasting friendships and networks. And you did touch on that a little bit about how you were able to introduce some of your fellow travelers to these niche small communities and villages in Greece. Uh, did you observe any kind of community building within your group this time that you thought was kind of notable or remarkable?
100%. You get a group of people together from different parts of the world that don't know each other. And you throw them in a room together and, shake, shake, shake. And what happens at the end is we become like a family or like the family you wish you had that you didn't have before, or a new family of people that you will keep in contact with and travel with again. On this particular trip, I had two people that have traveled with me. I think, let's see, maybe three or four times before. Um, and every trip, inevitably, they've said something to the effect of, "Oh, this was the best trip ever." And at the end of this trip, it was, "Sorry, this was the best trip ever." But what made it the best trip? Well, a lot of the people that haven't traveled with me before said, yeah, anybody can plan a trip and go to Greece or Spain or Vietnam or any of the places that I traveled to. Um, but the difference is you're traveling with a purpose and a theme. And that's the key or the thread that brings this small group of people together on this particular journey. And so you're all in this for different reasons. You know, some people said it was like their bucket list trip. They really didn't know anything about mythology. Um, one woman didn't know much about Carl Jung or Jungian psychotherapy. And when she left, she said she had a great knowledge of that and really dove headfirst into mythology and is like enamored with it. And, asked me to send her a huge reading list, which I'm working on for her now. Um, and the other thing that people say is, yes, they could have planned a trip themselves, but not like this. You would have never gone to the places that I went to if it was you and a friend, you and your significant other, you and your family. First of all, you wouldn't have known about this little tiny village, literally in the middle of nowhere, up in the Arcadia Mountains in Greece. Um, and how I found it was, people say, "How did you find this place?" or "How did you find this restaurant?" And I answer in a kind of funny way, like, "Oh, it's my special talent." Because honestly, I don't know how to describe how I find these places or where they came from. I just know that I'm really good at sourcing things and I'm really good at networking with people while I'm abroad and meeting locals and telling them a story about what I'm doing. And then they introduce me to another friend. Like tonight, this afternoon, I'm going to the ancient agora with a local, someone that lives in Athens. After that, I was invited to a gallery opening by a woman who's Greek that I met somewhere else in the world. So these things just kind of come together for me. And it's like the secret sauce. You're never telling anyone the recipe. But even if I could, I don't always know what those ingredients are. I just know that magic seems to happen. And, I asked people, what was your favorite place that we went to on this trip? Was it Athens? Was it this little village in the mountains? Or was it being on Hydra Island? And the answer is yes. And I'm like, well, yes to what? Well, yes, they all were. Like, I didn't think I'd like being in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, but that was like awesome. And it kind of made everyone drop down into the depths of what we were doing and everything sort of melted away at that point. And I think people became quite open and it was really beautiful. And then we do something called social dreaming every morning, which I think weaves the stories and the places and the people on the trip all together as well. I think that's a great way to bond and bring a group together. And I think I've said before, if people don't cry at the end of the trip, then I had to leave and say goodbye, then I have not done my job well. And yes, there were tears shed.
Powerful.
Yeah, it's really powerful. It's just this beautiful experience. And um, what makes me happy and sad at the end of my trips is that it's like creating a child. You conceive of this idea and it grows over months, sometimes years. This particular trip took about 5 years to grow because well, we were going to do it in 2020, the year of COVID, and then who knows what happened after that. Um, so it sort of snowballs and takes effect. And so I'm happy when the trip is happening, like all the details are organized and the trip is going wonderfully and people are engaged and happy and just loving things. And then at the end, to hear people's response about how their experience was. And then we all get a bit sad to say goodbye because, yes, I may see them again on other trips. And I usually do. Most people that come on my trips end up being, um, alumni and go on other trips with me or come on my online programs and that. But we'll never have the exact same experience, all of us in this particular group together. And so I get a little bit of postpartum depression. Um, Nothing serious, but it's a bit of a letdown. And to be back in Athens without the group seems very strange to me. Like something's missing. Um,
Yeah, I definitely, I generally don't travel a lot in groups, but there have been a few times, one time where I did, and I did a lot, and yeah, I definitely had that same sentiment or similar sentiment. And then, I went on a retreat one time, and I stayed an extra day at the place where it happened, and it was similar. Yeah, it just felt so. It felt weird, like it felt like it's a completely different
like,
place with a. So yeah, I kind of get that connection, because I've had a few kind of moments, kind of like that, I guess you could say, where during traveling abroad, and so I can understand that. Yeah, sometimes those deep connections can be made. Now, you mentioned, really briefly that you had a powerful experience with this, I guess, technique or called social dreaming. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about what that is and how it works and what makes it so impactful?
well, social dreaming really taps into the collective and you start out in a very strange configuration of chairs, which might be a little off-putting to people at first. It's like a snowflake pattern, where as if you had a dream group, like a a therapy dream group, you would sit in a circle and everybody's facing each other. Excuse me, and there's one person who's the facilitator. But in social dreaming, it's this random snowflake pattern where nobody's gazing at anybody's face. And the dreams are meant to be thought of as if the group had the dream, not as if it's, Leslie's dream and analyze it in terms of my psyche and my life and where I'm at. No, it becomes the group's dream. So, for instance, if I present a dream, then it's not my dream. It's the property of the group. And it's as if we all dreamt it because the collective psyche picks up on things from not only the group, but the community and the world at large. And uh, interesting things come out of that. So it's not psychotherapy, but it is therapeutic. And it was developed in London at the Tavistock Clinic in the 80s by Gordon Lawrence. And his inspiration for it came from a book from the 1930s that actually wasn't published till the 60s, of a woman named Charlotte Barrett who she was in Berlin in the 30s as the rise of the Nazis was happening, and she was having these crazy, horrible dreams. And she thought, I wonder if others are having these kinds of dreams. So she and a few colleagues and doctor friends of hers started collecting the dreams during the rise of the Third Reich. And what happened was she had to hide them in different places and she had to safeguard whose dreams they were so that if they were ever found, she or the people that dreamt them wouldn't be sent to the camps. So when things heated up even more in Germany and in Europe at the time, she started sending the dreams to people from around, to other people in other parts of the world who safeguarded them. And then later on in the 60s, it was published. Today, it's been out of print for a long time, but there's a reprint that they just did. And so the idea of these dreams was it told a story of the rise of totalitarianism. And there are people today that are looking at dreams and finding that similar types of dreams are happening as the world is evolving and changing, especially in the United States right now. But our social dreaming is a way that we associate to the dreams instead of, like I said, instead of analyzing them in terms of the person who had the dream. And it's an amazing experience that it's difficult to describe. And I would highly recommend that you come on a trip and then you'll get to experience it. And especially on a trip, people have pretty vivid dreams. Um, so social dreaming is a really great way to bring a group together and look at what's going on in our psyches, and also a lot of things from where we're going and what we're seeing and looking at in mythology and the ancient sites that we're looking at all came part of this and knit this amazing mosaic and tapestry of what our group dynamic and what we were seeing in the world was all about.
Awesome. And I know that you have places to go. You're going to the Agora and the gallery, and I think we're kind of getting close to that time for you to go. So maybe we could end on this question that I had that came up as you were talking about social dreaming, and it made me think about because that seems like to be a very I don't want to say clinical, but it's very psychological and very with your themes of Freud and Jung, it's very aligned with that uh, with those topics, and it made me think about the traveler who you had who was not familiar with Jung, and you had to they became interested, and now you're putting together a reading list for them. Maybe could you maybe talk about a little bit about how even though your trips have a very specific theme that's often associated with some sort of depth psychology or something of that something in that vein, what does your trip offer to people who maybe doesn't know anything about Jung, Freud, or have any typical interest in psychology? What would your trips offer to them that would make it worth it for them, even though they may have no background or even possibly interest in those types of topics?
Well, I get a lot of people that are not psychologists. I think you know that coming on one of my trips, psychologists, psychotherapists, marriage family therapists, social workers can earn quite a few, sometimes as much as 30 something continuing education credits. But I often get half the people in a group are not psychologists and don't have anything to do with it. Maybe they're interested in the place or the theme, and it offers them just as much, if not more, than the person that's looking at psychology. Because people will say to me before a trip, "Oh, can you give me the reading list and the bibliography? What do I need to do? What do I need to read to prepare for this?" And I say, there is no preparation. In fact, we prefer that you don't look at anything, that you all come into this, whether you think you know something or not. Like with myself, I thought I knew what an oracle was. Um, and my definition of that evolved throughout the 10 days or so. So it offers them an amazing experience, and they add as much, if not more, to the group as people that come in with a knowledge of Jung or mythology or whatever. Um, and for those that have a knowledge of different types of methodologies, they always learn something new. And I often say that it doesn't matter what the topic of the trip is, that you learn more about yourself than you ever thought was possible in this short span of time. So it is always a valuable learning experience and a wonderful, exciting way to sort of reinvigorate yourself and look at life in a new way. I don't know why I'm thinking of a story of a woman that came on a trip, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years ago, perhaps. And she came home from the trip and called me up and said, Leslie, I want to know what you think of this. I want to move to Vienna and study in Austria and change my life. And I said, well, I think that's amazing and that's a great idea. Anyway, she changed the whole trajectory of her career and her education through one of my trips. And that's what it's all about. It's having some kind of transformation, some kind of in-depth experience that we don't have when we're at home because we're too busy. We've got family, we've got work, we've got friends, we're driving, all of that. And when you come on a trip like this, you are in the thick of it, and it is all about you, and it is all about what we're seeing and doing. So I love that somebody has like this epiphany aha moment. I mean, for her, she'll tell you that the oracle was in travel.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And of
that
course, the trip wasn't just about Carl Jung and mythology. I, of course, always throw my speciality of Sigmund Freud in there. And next time we can talk, there's an interesting story about Sigmund Freud at the Acropolis. He wrote a beautiful paper about it. It's a letter that he wrote to a friend and colleague, Romain Rolland, for Rolland's 70th birthday. Um, it's a great paper. So let's remember to talk about it next time we get together.
absolutely. Yeah, I just took a quick note of that Freud, the Carapolis paper, and yeah, I do. As you know, like I guess philosophically, I'm more interested in the kind of Jungian thought, but I do love Freud's writings. I think Umberto Eco, he's a novelist. He said that something along the lines about how like he loves Jung's ideas more, but he loves Freud's writing more. So
Well, Freud won the Goethe Award for literature
yeah.
in, I don't know, like 19, I can't remember off the top of my head. And that's like a huge honor because his writing was so amazing and beautiful, where Carl Jung is a bit thick and difficult sometimes. Um, but also, Jung and Freud both had these dreams. Jung's dream, especially, is profound and prophetic, which sometimes social dreaming can be. I'm not going to say it's like prophecy and it tells the fortune telling to the future, but it does give you an idea of what's in the collective psyche and what's to come. Before World War I broke out, Carl Jung had this famous dream where he was on a train and he had this vision of like blood and gore and blah, blah, blah. And I'm paraphrasing and making it very short right now. Um, and then he thought, well, it happened two more times, and he thought he was having a psychotic break. And then World War I broke out the following month. And not that he was happy that obviously World War I broke out, but he realized he wasn't having a psychotic break. And as social dreaming also does, he tapped into the collective psyche, which is the same as the inspiration of social dreaming from this book by Charlotte Barrett, tapping into that collective psyche. So I'll let you know about the ancient agora today. I'm really excited to go there. And then I'll do something a little more chic at a fancy art gallery opening.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you have a fun day and an interesting
Yeah,
day and itinerary for yourself. And yeah, let's definitely speak again soon and
sounds good.
maybe in a different country.
Well, I'm off to Italy tomorrow, so let's talk next week from Italy.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All
So
right, thanks. Bye. Bye for now.